The moment I was confronted with his odd behavior, I began to experience apprehension, and I wanted to leave. I said that I believed we were so different that there was no possibility of our getting along. "One of us has to change," he said, staring at the ground. "And you know who." He began humming a Mexican folk song, and then lifted his head abruptly and looked at me. His eyes were fierce and burning. I wanted to look away or close my eyes, but to my utter amazement, I couldn't break away from his gaze. He asked me to tell him what I had seen in his eyes. I said that I saw nothing, but he insisted that I had to voice what his eyes had made me feel aware of. I struggled to make him understand that the only thing his eyes made me aware of was my embarrassment, and that the way he was looking at me was very discomforting. He didn't let go. He kept a steady stare. It wasn't an outright menacing or mean look, it was rather a mysterious but unpleasant gaze. He asked me if he reminded me of a bird. "A bird?" I exclaimed. He giggled like a child and moved his eyes away from me. "Yes," he said softly. "A bird. A very funny bird." He locked his gaze on me again and commanded me to remember. He said with an extraordinary conviction that he knew I had seen that look before. My feelings of the moment were that the old man provoked me, against my honest desire, every time he opened his mouth. I stared back at him in obvious defiance. Instead of getting angry, he began to laugh. He slapped his thigh and yelled as if he were riding a wild horse. Then he became serious and told me that it was of utmost importance that I stop fighting him and remember that funny bird he was talking about. "Look into my eyes," he said. His eyes were extraordinarily fierce. There was a feeling about them that actually reminded me of something, but I wasn't sure what it was. I pondered upon it for a moment, and then I had a sudden realization. It wasn't the shape of his eyes, nor the shape of his head, but some cold fierceness in his gaze that had reminded me of the look in the eyes of a falcon. At the very moment of that realization, he was looking at me askew, and for an instant my mind experienced a total chaos. I thought I had seen a falcon's features instead of Don Juan's. The image was too fleeting, and I was too upset to have paid more attention to it. In a very excited tone, I told him that I could have sworn I had seen the features of a falcon on his face. He had another attack of laughter. "I have seen the look in the eyes of falcons. I used to hunt them when I was a boy, and in the opinion of my grandfather, I was good. He had a Leghorn chicken farm, and falcons were a menace to his business. Shooting them was not only functional, but also right. I had forgotten until that moment that the fierceness of their eyes had haunted me for years, but it was so far in my past that I thought I had lost the memory of it. "I used to hunt falcons," I said. "I know it," Don Juan replied, matter-of-factly. His tone carried such a certainty that I began to laugh. I thought he was a preposterous fellow. He had the gall to sound as if he knew I had hunted falcons. I felt supremely contemptuous of him. "Why do you get so angry?" he asked in a tone of genuine concern. I didn't know why. He began to probe me in a very unusual manner. He asked me to look at him again and tell him about the very funny bird he reminded me of. I struggled against him and, out of contempt, said that there was nothing to talk about. Then I felt compelled to ask him why he had said he knew I used to hunt falcons. Instead of answering me, he again commented on my behavior. He said I was a violent fellow that was capable of frothing at the mouth at the drop of a hat. I protested that that was not true. I had always had the idea I was rather congenial and easygoing. I said it was his fault for forcing me out of control with his unexpected words and actions. "Why the anger?" he asked. I took stock of my feelings and reactions. I really had no need to be angry with him. He again insisted that I should look into his eyes and tell him about the strange falcon. He had changed his wording. He had said before, "a very funny bird." Then he substituted it with "strange falcon." The change in wording summed up a change in my own mood. I had suddenly become sad. He squinted his eyes until there were two slits and said in an overdramatic voice that he was seeing a very strange falcon. He repeated his statement 3 times as if he were actually seeing it there in front of him. "Don't you remember it?" he asked. I didn't remember anything of the sort. "What's strange about the falcon?" I asked. "You must tell me that," he replied. I insisted that I had no way of knowing what he was referring to, therefore I couldn't tell him anything. "Don't fight me," he said. "Fight your sluggishness, and remember." I seriously struggled for a moment to figure him out. It didn't occur to me that I could just as well have tried to remember. "There was a time when you saw a lot of birds," he said, as though cueing me. I told him that when I was a child I had lived on a farm and had hunted hundreds of birds. He said that if that was the case I shouldn't have any difficulty remembering all the funny birds I had hunted. He looked at me with a question in his eyes, as if he had just given me the last clue. "I've hunted so many birds," I said, "that I can't remember anything about them." "This bird is special," he replied, almost in a whisper. "This bird is a falcon." I became involved again in figuring out what he was driving at. Was he teasing me? Was he serious? After a long interval, he urged me again to remember. I felt that it was useless for me to try to end his play. The only other thing I could do was to join him. "Are you talking about a falcon that I have hunted?" I asked. "Yes," he whispered with his eyes closed. "So this happened when I was a boy?" "Yes." "But you said you're seeing a falcon in front of you now." "I am." "What are you trying to do to me?" "I'm trying to make you remember." "What, for heaven's sakes?" "A falcon swift as light," he said, looking at me in the eyes. I felt my heart had stopped. "Now look at me," he said. But I didn't. I heard his voice as a faint sound. Some stupendous recollection had taken me wholly. The white falcon. It all began with my grandfather's explosion of anger upon taking account of his young leghorn chickens. They had been disappearing in a steady and disconcerting manner. He personally organized and carried out a meticulous vigil, and after days of steady watching, we finally saw a big white bird flying away with a young leghorn chicken in its claws. The bird was fast and apparently knew its route. It swooped down from behind some trees, grabbed the chicken, and flew away through an opening between 2 ranches. It happened so fast that my grandfather had hardly seen it, but I did, and I knew that it was indeed a falcon. My grandfather said that if that was the case, it had to be an albino. We started a campaign against the albino falcon, and twice I thought I had gotten it. It even dropped its prey, but it got away. It was too fast for me. It was also very intelligent. It never came back to hunt on my grandfather's farm. I would have forgotten about it had my grandfather not needled me to hunt the bird. For 2 months, I chased the albino falcon all over the valley where I lived. I learned its habits and I could almost intuit its route of flight. Yet its speed and the suddenness of its appearance would always baffle me. I could boast that I had prevented it from taking its prey, perhaps every time we had met, but I could never bag it. In the 2 months that I carried on the strange war against the albino falcon, I came close to it only once. I had been chasing it all day and I was tired. I'd sat down to rest and fell asleep under a tall eucalyptus tree. The sudden cry of a falcon woke me up. I opened my eyes without making any other movement, and I saw a whitish bird perched in the highest branches of the eucalyptus tree. It was the albino falcon. The chase was over. It was going to be a difficult shot. I was lying on my back and the bird had its back turned to me. There was a sudden gust of wind, and I used it to muffle the noise of lifting my .22 long rifle to take aim. I wanted to wait until the bird had turned or until it had begun to fly, so I wouldn't miss it. But the albino bird remained motionless. In order to take a better shot, I would have needed to move, and the falcon was too fast for that. I thought that my best alternative was to wait. And I did. A long, interminable time. Perhaps what affected me was the long wait, or perhaps it was the loneliness of the spot where the bird and I were. I suddenly felt a chill up my spine, and in an unprecedented action I stood up and left. I didn't even look to see if the bird had flown away. I never attached any significance to my final act with the albino falcon. However, it was terribly strange that I didn't shoot it. I had shot dozens of falcons before. On the farm where I grew up, shooting birds or hunting any kind of animal was a matter of course. Don Juan listened attentively as I told him the story of the albino falcon. "How did you know about the white falcon?" I asked when I had finished. "I saw it," he replied. "Where?" "Right here, in front of you." I wasn't in an argumentative mood anymore. "What does all this mean?" I asked. He said that a white bird like that was an omen, and that not shooting it down was the only right thing to do. "Your death gave you a little warning," he said with a mysterious tone. "It always comes as a chill." "What are you talking about?" I said nervously. He really made me nervous with his spooky talk. "You know a lot about birds," he said. "You've killed too many of them. You know how to wait. You've waited patiently for hours. I know that. I am seeing it." His words caused a great turmoil in me. I thought that what annoyed me the most about him was his certainty. I couldn't stand his dogmatic assuredness about the issues in my own life that I wasn't sure of myself. I became engulfed in my feelings of dejection, and I didn't see him leaning over me until he actually had whispered something in my ear. I didn't understand at first, and he repeated it. He told me to turn around casually and look at a boulder to my left. He said that my death was there, staring at me, and if I turned when he signaled me, I might be capable of seeing it. He signaled me with his eyes. I turned, and I thought I saw a flickering movement over the boulder. A chill ran through my body. The muscles of my abdomen contracted involuntarily, and I experienced a jolt, a spasm. After a moment, I regained my composure, and I explained away the sensation of seeing the flickering shadow as an optical illusion caused by turning my head so abruptly. "Death is our eternal companion," Don Juan said with a most serious air. "It is always to our left, at an arm's length. It was watching you when you were watching the white falcon. It whispered in your ear, and you felt its chill as you felt it today. It's always been watching you. It always will." until the day it taps you." He extended his arm and touched me lightly on the shoulder, and at the same time he made a deep clicking sound with his tongue. The effect was devastating. I almost got sick to my stomach. "You're the boy who stalked a game and waited patiently as death waits. You know very well that death is to our left, the same way you were to the left of the White Falcon." His words had the strange power to plunge me into an unwarranted terror. My only defense was my compulsion to commit to writing everything he said. "How can anyone feel so important when we know that death is stalking us?" he asked. I had the feeling my answer was not really needed. I couldn't have said anything anyway. A new mood had possessed me. "The thing to do when you're impatient," he proceeded, "is to turn to your left and ask advice from your death. An immense amount of pettiness is dropped if your death makes a gesture to you, or if you catch a glimpse of it, or if you just have the feeling that your companion is there, watching you." He leaned over again and whispered in my ear that if I turned to my left suddenly, upon seeing his signal, I could again see my death on the boulder. His eyes gave me an almost imperceptible signal, but I didn't dare to look. I told him that I believed him, and that he didn't have to press the issue any further, because I was terrified. He had one of his roaring belly laughs. He replied that the issue of our death was never pressed far enough, and I argued that it would be meaningless for me to dwell upon my death, since such a thought would only bring discomfort and fear. "You're full of crap," he exclaimed. "Death is the only wise advisor that we have. Whenever you feel, as you always do, that everything is going wrong and you're about to be annihilated, turn to your death and ask if that is so. Your death will tell you that you're wrong, that nothing really matters outside its touch. Your death will tell you, 'I haven't touched you yet.'" He shook his head and seemed to be waiting for my reply. I had none. My thoughts were running rampant. He delivered a staggering blow to my egotism. The pettiness of being annoyed with him was monstrous in the light of my death. I had the feeling he was fully aware of my change of mood. He'd turned the tide in his favor. He smiled and began to hum a Mexican tune. "Yes," he said softly after a long pause. "One of us here has to change, and fast. One of us here has to learn again that death is the hunter, and that it is always to one's left. One of us here has to ask death's advice and drop the cursed pettiness that belongs to men that live their lives as if death will never tap them." We remained quiet for more than an hour. Then we started walking again. We meandered in the desert chaparral for hours. I didn't ask him if there was any purpose to it. It didn't matter. Somehow he'd made me recapture an old feeling, something I'd quite forgotten. The sheer joy of just moving around without attaching any intellectual purpose to it. I wanted him to let me catch a glimpse of whatever I'd seen on the boulder. "Let me see that shadow again," I said. "You mean your death, don't you?" he replied with a touch of irony in his voice. For a moment, I felt reluctant to voice it. "Yes," I finally said, "let me see my death once again." "Not now," he said. "You're too solid." "I beg your pardon?" He began to laugh, and for some unknown reason, his laughter was no longer offensive and insidious as it had been in the past. I didn't think that it was different from the point of view of its pitch, or its loudness, or the spirit of it. The new element was my mood. In view of my impending death, my fears and annoyance were nonsense. "Let me talk to plants, then," I said. He roared with laughter. "You're too good now," he said, still laughing. "You go from one extreme to the other. Be still. There's no need to talk to plants unless you want to know their secrets. And for that, you need the most unbending intent. So save your good wishes. There's no need to see your death either. It's sufficient that you feel its presence around you."